to study abroad for your post-secondary or postgraduate studies? Stand a chance to win a $1,000 or $500 tuition fee scholarship. Attend the Harvest Field Education Virtual Fair on Saturday, the 1st of May from 4 to 8 p.m. West Africa time. Meet reps from top institutions in Canada, the UK, Ireland, and the USA. Chat, download their materials, and upload your credentials for immediate assessment. Access is free, but registration is compulsory. Visit harvestfieldedu.vfairs.com to register now. You will receive a confirmation email with your login details to join us from the comfort of your home. Harvest Field Education Services, your best guide to studying abroad. Email harvestfieldedu@yahoo.com.
Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to today's edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime. We are this day going to be looking at holistic education according to the African perspective. What has not worked so well for the educational system in Africa, and also looking at ways of fixing the system so that we get to teach our students and pupils how to provide solutions, ready solutions for African problems. We are going to be discussing this with panelists who are already seated. Dr. Nick NGWANYAM is there with us. He is a seasoned educationist. Good evening, doctor, and welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with us again, and we are discussing a very serious topic tonight, and I'm glad to have my other co-panelists here. I will not call their names, but I think we make a good team, and we are here actually to educate ourselves, to know what we should be doing, and probably as examples we'll see why we are failing, and then we'll also understand what we can do so that we can improve on our lot. It's very, very important, and I hope that parents and children are at home would take time off to listen. We are hoping that the government would do something to improve on our education, but again, you know, when we talk about education, it's the parents, the children, the government, and the community. So while waiting for the government to respond, the parents should begin to know what is right.
Okay, we are also in the company of Dr. BUSIE ERNEST, all the way from Boya. He is an educationist and a psychologist. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. I'm humbled to be here today in the midst of senior doctors here in the house. Mr. Leo will be talking on critical issues because education is a pillar of every country. And I want to say that we need to improve on our educational system because we can see a lot of deviant behavior, a lot of antisocial behavior in our schools today to say that our education has a problem. And also permit me to say one or two things, Mr. Leo. Yesterday, the Regional Executive Council of the Regional Council held in Boya, and there's some problems where the president of the Regional Council in the Southwest region, they were complaining of transfer of competencies, meaning that the government of Cameroon have not yet they don't yet know their competencies, they don't know what they are supposed to be doing, and they were also complaining of the organigram of the Regional Council, meaning that they don't understand how the organigram of the Regional Council looks like. And they were also complaining on issues of funding, because we are talking of special status, we don't understand the content of the status, and people are already talking about funding. They don't, and the regional president also and the assembly, they were talking of issues of logistics. They don't have a place yet, and I think that our government should fasten that. We are talking of regional councils, and we are talking of education too, because we feel that the regional council have a lot to do with education.
Okay, so, with the English subsystem of education, that is what we are talking about. We raised that already, but we think that we are planning an edition on that in 2 weeks' time to talk about how effective the special status can be. Is it feasible, given the context in which we find ourselves? A document is being prepared in that direction. When it is ready, we're going to discuss on that out here. But we are also in the company of Dr. NDIMANCHO. He is a lecturer with some university outfits in the country. We are glad to have you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Leo. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about that the sensitive topic, education. When we talk about education, it is everybody that is touched, because either you go through formal education, or you go through informal education, or you go through non-formal education, everybody goes through education. So it is an important topic for us to be able to share and to discuss, and also let people understand exactly what level they are, because this is something that people talk about, but improving in it is also an issue. So it's a sensitive topic and a vast topic too. And I'm glad to be here today.
We also in the company of Professor Mark Anthony, who is an educationist, happens to be a Pan-Africanist also, but he's sitting in today as an educationist. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Leo, and to my fellow panelists, and to the million viewers of my Media Prime out there watching at us now. I think this is one of the best topics so far that we're discussing about concerning Africa and Cameroon, because sincerely, most of our problems we have in Cameroon and in Africa as a whole has to do with education. And I think education is a fundamental right for every citizen. In fact, it's an inalienable right for every human being. And precisely we're discussing on it, and we'll look at how fundamental it is, and also find out if education is being violated and how it is violated. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with you, Dr. Nick NGWANYAM. We are talking about education. Can we really make our viewers understand what we mean by education?
Thank you very much. Probably I will leave the basic definition for my friends to help me.
Okay.
But let me just, I was thinking just before we started, there is this thing called wisdom. If I asked you what is wisdom, what would you say? In fact, that word wisdom is very, very difficult to define. And I only got, you know, like when you ask someone, what is wisdom? Oh, have wisdom like King Solomon. What do you mean by have wisdom like King Solomon? What's it? And I didn't get to know it until about about 10 years ago, maybe, that I was listening to Pastor Chris. And Pastor Chris broke it down for me. And I now understood what wisdom is. And I put it down in a mathematical formula.
Pastor Chris in Nigeria?
Yes.
We have one of our brothers who is called Pastor Chris too. Yeah.
Oh, no, not that one. The Nigerian, the one who has mega churches.
Okay.
Another one
Now,
is South Africa.
listen, wisdom, I mean, if like anyone else, if one were to ask you what is the most important thing that you can ask for, is wisdom. Like King Solomon is the wisest, so he got wisdom. Wisdom equals three things: information plus understanding plus doing. That's it. Information plus understanding plus doing. And once you have information and you get an understanding, that's 50% of your problem solved. Then when you do, that is 100%. Keep this formula in mind and make sure that you always go through it. Get information, get an understanding on the information. When we define that word understanding, we can go into its many facets. And then what do we mean by doing? And you realize that our education in Cameroon lacks, it is information. It lacks understanding, and it lacks the capacity to do. Now, before I give back the microphone, may His Eminent Christian Cardinal Toomey, may his soul rest in peace. He taught me and many other people what it means to succeed in life. It doesn't matter what you are doing, and you need to understand 6 different things that you must do to succeed. And if you look at those 6 different things, you will see the types of education that are embedded in them. Number 1, if you want to succeed, you must like work. Number 2, you must like work that is well done. Are you saying the doing part? Number 3, you must have intellectual honesty. Number 4, you must have self-discipline. Number 5, you must pray. That's, you must get in connection with the source of intuition and creative power. And number 6, you must respect the environment. That is Mother Earth. Thank you.
Okay, wisdom is very, very important.
Okay.
I would love to have wisdom, not in the dimension of Solomon, because his wisdom made him to be so promiscuous, but in the dimension of Daniel, that is what I pray for. Yes. I want wisdom in the dimension of Daniel, not Solomon. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. I want to say that education is a very important concept, and education is the acquisition of skills, values, norms, and so on. And when you look at education should make somebody self-develop and become independent to solve real-life problems. And if you're educated, we look at education from all perspectives, because I look at education in Cameroon focus on certification, passing exams. That's not all about education. Education has to do with the acquisition of competencies, values, skills, capacities, knowledge, abilities, aptitude that can make you survive in difficult times and that can make you resilient. And when you look at education, there's what we call formal education, informal education, non-formal education. And formal education, to me, it should start at home, especially informal education, where values should be taught to children. Our forefathers did not even go to school, but their own education was to apprenticeship, where they transfer skills to children and capacities. Somebody could be a carpenter, an expert in carpentry, without even going to formal education, and those values were transmitted at home. Somebody could be values like cooking, like taking care of house chores. Those are informal education that takes place at home. Morality, values. And I want to tell you that such education is very important for the self-development of a child. And education now transit now to the formal sector, which is a school. And in the school, there is a teacher. And the teacher should be a facilitator, somebody who guides children to get knowledge. Because the word education comes from the Greek word eduke. Eduke and educere, which means to bring out, to train, to bring out something from somebody, to bring out. And we also have non-formal education, and education that happens in the garages, education that happens with hairdressing, all those skills. But Mr. Leo, when you look at education in our schools in Cameroon, I think that education has been focused on theory. Because why would students be abusing their teachers in school? Why would students cut the arms of their friends in school? Because I think that education in our school system is all about achievement and certification. They don't look about moral skills. They don't look about social skills. They don't look about entrepreneurial skills. They look at only cognitive skills that people should pass exam. They don't look about emotional skills, because children need to have emotions for others. They need to have feelings for others. They need to have empathy for others. And I think that our education system in Cameroon has to be transformative. When I say transformative, it has to be hands-on. Because when you look at the education system in Cameroon, it's all about papers. Look, recently the Chinese are bringing in gari in Cameroon. Why is it that in our educational system we cannot practice how to process gari and ensure that we preserve gari so that people can consume gari for a long time? And you look at our educational system, it's not hands-on. Like, for example, you look at children who are doing engineering in our schools, you will discover that most of them, even like those who are doing agriculture, they cannot even drive a tractor. So our educational system is tailored only on the cognitive abilities. We have forgotten about skills, and I think that skills are very important to solve real life problems. And I think that the education of Cameroon, we have to restructure our educational system in such a way that a child can still leave primary school and the child is productive, because at the end of the day, employability is very important. A child should be self-reliant. Look at Julius Nyerere. Julius Nyerere of Tanzania brought in the concept of self-reliance, where children can learn and they gain skills and abilities and become independent. So our education in Cameroon is in such a way that people get just ideas, they get knowledge about concept. After that, they don't have a work to do. They keep blaming the government because they cannot be self-reliant. They have to train persons to be independent, to think critically, because we need critical thinking. Look at the Chinese. If I tell you that Cameroonian students cannot produce toothpick, why? Because our education is not reflective, it is not creative, it is not imaginative.
Students cannot produce toothpicks. Can our engineers do so?
Because of our educational system.
Those who call themselves engineers,
because of our educational system, because you pass through an educational system before you become an engineer.
Engineers don't produce it. You want students to produce
because it. I'm telling you that, Mr. Leo, I'm telling you that if these skills are available in our schools and our schools are resource based, let me tell you, I'm a psychologist and an educationist. There's what we call constructive learning. And constructive learning is learning by doing.
Okay.
And the truth is that when students don't learn through hands-on activity with experience, there is no way they can become productive.
Okay,
it's very important.
Professor Mark Anthony, we are talking about holistic African education here. We are told that civilization started in Africa. Africa had the biggest universities. Yes. Can we understand where Africa is coming from? I don't know whether you've read about the history of African education. What was the focus of education at the time?
Okay, before I actually get to enter, I should join in the definition of education as Dr. Nick and Dr. BUSIE started. I want to use the etymological direction of that definition because it is important that we should not make mistakes with such words. Words are very important. The word education, as Dr. BUSIE rightly mentioned, actually is coming from a Latin word, educe, which actually means to bring out from within. And therefore, if we have to define education using that word, it should mean education is that acquisition of information that actually inspires an individual to bring out what he possesses inside. That is a simple definition for education, implying that as long as I am educated, I have something in me, and what we call that thing inside of you is called potential. Every individual has potential in him or in her, and once you are educated, the focus of education should cause you to get to the place of self-realization. And I would say that had been the focus of ancient African fathers. If we go back into the African history, you would realize that there were universities in Timbuktu before we have the first university in Europe, in ancient Mali. We had universities in Egypt before you had the first university in Europe. The question we should now ask is, where have those universities gone to? Something happened along the way. But I would say education is meant to be holistic. When we use the word holistic, a lot of us, we start asking, what does that actually mean? It has to do not just with you training the physical aspect or the mind of an individual, the brain of an individual, the external part of man. Holistic means you need to educate the whole man, as we talk, the whole man. And if you want to look at man, man is a psychosomatic being. I know a lot of us, we have a definition of man as man is a spirit that has a soul and lives in a body. That is a definition that actually is wrong when it comes to presenting man. Man is a psychosomatic being, implying that man is a complex unified whole. When it's a complex unified whole, it implies that this man is spirit, soul, body. There is no way to divide it. Where you see the spirit, it is without a body, it is a ghost. Where you see the body without a spirit, it is a corpse. So if man must be man, he needs to be whole, spirit, soul, body. That is the psychosomatic aspect of him. And when you look at this man, most of what our ancestors or our fathers before us actually used to do, they were not focusing in imposing on you what you need to learn. They used to take their time, they look at their children as they are growing, they lead you towards the desires of your heart. And as they are leading you, they permit you to choose the direction of what you think that you are competent in doing. And while they are doing that, they are inculcating values in you as a child that permits you to be able to live with other humans along in the community. And when schooling came, because I will tell you, schools started long ago. It started with priests. There were priests that were actually being formed first, because these priests were the ones were counselors to kings, and they needed to be able to have knowledge on geometry. They needed to have knowledge on mathematics. They needed to have knowledge on how to be able to articulate. And with that, they also needed to learn how to transmit spiritual insight to the natural man who does not understand what they understand. And so it gave them the capacity to learn from inside out and learn from the spirit body. So it permitted a kind of knowledge to assess our communities that gave creativity, because Mr. Leo, the focus of that kind of education brings creativity. When you look at there's one of the most ancient standing pyramids today that is standing, that was built by Khufu, Pharaoh Khufu. But if you want to go behind, the first pyramid that came during the second dynasty in Egypt, which was one of the largest, was built by a priest. This priest was an architect. He was a counselor to the king.
Okay.
And at the same time, Mr. Leo, this particular priest was a physician until the Greeks, when the Greeks came studying him.
Yeah, but I want us to focus on Africa. Eh?
Yes, I'm still talking on Africa. When the Greeks came, they called him the god of medicine. He's called the god of medicine because to them, they gathered information concerning him. Because today we have, when you go, you want to ask who is the father of medicine in the world, they will tell you it is Hippocrates. Hippocrates learned in Africa. And before him, 2,500 years before him, there was somebody whom, when they came, they called him the god of medicine. And this man had put down 70 principles on how to heal a human body, which they took down. And today, those principles are still in existence.
Okay.
For doctors, I think we have Dr. Nick here who can talk about the Hippocratic principles.
Okay,
and
that's
explain it more.
That's medicine. But if education, because we seemingly are limiting the education to schooling here.
Yes.
I'm sure if you are in a garage, schooling. Education is teaching.
Yeah, yes. Kind of non-formal.
Yeah, yes. Informal education.
Informal.
Yes. But what went wrong if the birth of civilization, almost everything was in Africa? What went wrong? We sold ourselves, or we decided to remain dull, or what happened?
You should understand, that there was an intention of someone to help us, to make us remain where we are. Remember that after independence of African states in the 1960s upward, 1957, 1960, after the end of colonialism and the advent of neo-colonialism, the colonialists actually want us to remain at the level of reading and writing. Yeah. They didn't want us to do anything. The best that they wanted for us was that they could come and communicate with us, and then they could write to us, we read, and we end at that. We were their agricultural field, and they didn't want us to compete with them in any way. And therefore, you realize that in the 1960s, when you even look at some countries like Japan, that was even like Cameroon in 1960, that has gone advanced us in Cameroon, because we actually remain with that mind that the colonial, if you look at even the curriculum in Cameroon, whereby we even refuse to talk about our own history, and we are interested in talking about the history of other people.
Sweden.
Yes, Sweden, America. I was talking with a student. I was talking to a student, and I asked the student about the presidents of America, the past president of America. The student gave me the dates and the names of the presidents of America since independence.
56 of them.
But I asked that student whether he knows how to nurse even these tomatoes, and even to water it. The student could not. I mean, it's unbelievable, but it's true. So you realize that it is that kind of education whereby we were taught to recite. But even in our examination, you know that what happened? Children put their feet in water and they want to cram things. They don't want to produce. Education is transformative, but we were taught to remain people who repeat things. We keep on repeating what other people have said, and we left education at a level of transmission. Yeah. Whereby a teacher comes to class, wants to transmit what he has. He doesn't want you to,
doctor,
to produce what is in you.
If I get your point, yes. Because my question is, what went wrong? did we arrive at a point where we stopped observing our immediate surroundings and its problems to finding solutions to them, and then we're given what to start thinking about, which has no relation to our immediate...
Remember that when we talk about civilization, we talk about agriculture. Yes, because it starts with the River Nile and whatsoever. And at that very particular time when we started in Africa, who were those who were actually experts in agriculture to take it forward? Even the few people who could read and write and who could do anything better, when they saw you were intelligent, they whipped you off from Africa. We have had a lot of African geniuses, even right up to today, who prefer to work and develop Europe and America than work back here in Africa. That is what happened. We have had a lot of people who were proud to remain in Europe, to meet their families in Europe, rather than develop Africa that we have. And I keep on insisting, it was not entirely their fault. It is because somebody meant it to be so. We refuse to be able to lift up Africa that was still crippling to the level where we wanted it to be. I mean, I think that is where the issue is. I mean, we cannot...
Did we stop thinking and allowed others to think for us?
Yes.
Colonialism make enable also think other people to think for us.
Mr. Leo, let me add something.
Doctor, it's mysterious.
There is a video. There is a video that we are going to put on TV and social media. It's a video of when President Sarkozy was still president of France, and he was having this conversation with His Excellency President Paul Biya, and it was an honest conversation where President Sarkozy was saying that Africans just live in nature. You know, we just live in nature. We wake up in the morning and we just blend with the animals and the rain and the sunshine and so on, and we don't think out of the box, and we just go through this cycle of dry season, rainy season, and so on. And we just cycling out. And it looks like somebody. I mean, forget about the neocolonialism and all that kind of thing. But what he was bringing to our attention is that we have just gone into that natural pattern, and we don't want to break from it. And sometimes, probably when God gives you a very tough and so on, so you just stay with the nature and you don't want to develop anything. And that's what I know that people have put pressure on us, have derailed us and so on, but there's something inherent about us that is not right. God gave Africa all the resources, but he gave the Asians the intelligence and the discipline, especially the Japanese, as you were saying. The Japanese have the intelligence and the discipline. Think of Singapore. You were mentioning Singapore, South Korea. Singapore is it's just a small group of islands. The land surface is not very much, but their president brought that wisdom to them, and they're one of the richest countries in the world now. And so it is about the intelligence. That's what we are here for. We are talking about how do you develop that wisdom, that mind? How do you cure your mind out of this laziness? There is something that we must bring out. Otherwise, we Africans, we are going to rot. Now, that said, let me go back again and just polish something on education. What is education? Education, we can break it in two parts. Like my friends were saying, it's a technique in which you are a child or an adult or whoever, you are groomed so that something that is greatness comes out of you, so that creativity comes out of you. Greatness doesn't come out of you to be telling stories. Greatness comes out of you to be solving problems. You are known for being great because of the problems in the community that you are solving, not because of the story that you tell. So it is your capacity to solve problems in the community that makes you rich, that gives you wealth. We need to understand this. And back to that, our education again, you get it in two parts. There are two parts. Number one, the theory and the instruction and so on. Then number two, the practical part, which is very, very important, that we have failed to acquire. We have failed to acquire that practical part. And then to this, character, watch my lips, character, attitude. Like we've said before, you can have all the theoretical training and all the practical training, and all of that amounts only to 25% of your success. Character or attitude is responsible for 75% of your success in life. So let's keep this in mind and realize that somewhere along the line we missed it.
We missed it. Want us to really be simple as possible, and it is easy to hear when you're passing, that man an educated man, that man will be educated man. When you say an educated person, doctor.
See, and when we say educated person, I'm glad he is saying it. Don't confuse an educated person with a literate person.
Yeah.
Those two things are different.
Yeah.
When we are talking about education, a grandmama, I mean a mama who is in the village, who is duty conscious and who is doing her job well and who is part of the community and who uses the resources excellently and adds value to systems, can bring up her family well and so on, and is part of the community. She is not a nuisance to the community, but she adds to the well-being of the community. She's educated. But a literate person is just one who reads. You can be literate but not educated, and we have a lot of literate people who are uneducated in Cameroon. That's why they steal. You see, like the COVID money, they are very literate people. They were given the money, they stole it, so they are uneducated because they didn't understand.
Let me add to that too.
Okay.
An educated person, like the learned Dr. Nick said, there's somebody who is cultured.
Okay.
If you are cultured, you are educated.
That's the word.
We have our mamas in the village, they have not gone to school, but they are cultured. And you see them running CWF meetings and so on. They are running
CWA is successful.
CWA, they are reading, they read also in church, they are literate. And I want to say that Mr. Leo, the missionaries brought us literacy education.
Okay.
And their literacy education is what has killed us, because when you look at our own education, especially in Africa, our own education was more of apprenticeship. When I say apprenticeship, it's a kind of, because I did my PhD thesis on this, it's a kind of education where skills are being transmitted by an expert to a novice. And we had that kind of education here where cognitive skill, where mental skills, abilities, values were being transmitted to our to children. Let me say, for example, in our villages, you used to see our parents when they are going for their meeting. At times, if they are not good for a meeting, they send a child, and the child goes and represents them in a meeting. The child is able to even play the jange of the ma or the daddy, and at the end the child gains calculative skill, the child gains social skills, because with education should make a child develop what we call social intelligence. Because many a times we focus only on academic performance, subject based, and subject based.
You don't pass list A.
You don't pass list A. At the end, those who pass list A, they are not even productive. But I want to say that some are productive, but most are not even productive at the end, because those who have even a 2 GPA at the end, they are very resilient. They are very enterprising. You see them hawking. You see them solving real life problems. You go to markets, Munya market, you see them with first degree, they are able to solve daily life problems, because as doctor said, the aim of education is to solve real life problems. If you cannot solve a problem, then that is not education. Education, you get up in the morning, even you cannot clean your house, you cannot fix your bed. Are you educated? So I think that we have to be looking at things from a holistic perspective. As doctor said there, we have to look at things, plus as Prof said, that holistic education builds a whole person. When we say a whole person in terms of physical, a child should be able to crawl before the child stands, and then the child should be able to walk. That is physical development. The child should be, how should a child develop? Through nutrition, through play, and so on. Allow children develop physically. And also people can develop through social intelligence, where children interact with others in society, they gain ideas from others, and with that they gain communication skills and so on. Because children, even in the environment, children will not even learn how to communicate only in school. Through interaction in their social environment, they are learning. Emotions. Parents also must teach their children how to feel for others. And if parents are teaching their children how to feel for others, it's education. And I want to focus on what we call indigenous education. Very important in Africa. Indigenous education was what we practice in Africa. And the colonialists brought in their literacy education. And indigenous education was meant to solve real life problems. Even our forefathers, when they did not go to school, they didn't have the money, they have to go hunting to bring back meat that will help the family to sustain. Even you go to some communities in South Africa and so on, they know that the role of the woman, the role of the man is to take care of the role of the woman is to take care of the children. The role of the man is to go out there and work and so on. But education says that what? Education entails that a man and a woman should in the home should join together to parent their children, and there's what we call perennialism. And perennial, we have school of thought, philosophical school of thought in education. We call it perennialism. And perennialism was transmission of values and skills from one person to another. And we have seen that, as I wanted to say, a man and a woman in a home, if you are not cultured, where you don't learn some kind of parental theories or some values from a generation, you will not be able to transmit certain values to children. So I wanted to end by saying that perennialism is very important, and the school of pragmatism, because education believes in pragmatism, so that when children learn whatever they learn, they should be able to practice. And essentialism.
Learn from where now?
They should learn from the environment.
You are talking big grammar. I want everybody who is watching.
Okay. What we are saying is that what we are saying is that learning doesn't take place only in the school campus. Learning doesn't take place only through instruction in school. Learning takes place both at home, at school, and the environment. So what I'm saying is that the parent, they have a lot of values to inculcate to their children for learning to take place. And also the informal sector like garages and so on.
Yes,
so it's a holistic perspective.
I ask something here. I say, doctor, who is an educated person? Because, and I say, where did it go wrong? How do we explain that before the arrival of the white man in Africa, we knew how to solve almost every problem that we had? If not, we would not have survived now. Before the white man, yes, we would have all died. We knew how to solve our health problems. We knew how to solve our issues when it comes to cooking. We knew how to solve almost every problem, which means that we were creative. Are we saying that because today we depend entirely
on Europeans,
on the West, have we become so dull?
Okay.
Why don't we create things again?
Mr. Liu, I want to answer that question. The very first problem of the African man is the fact that he is a social person.
We were deceived?
He's a social person, let me put it there. Then with the invasion of the Westerners and the Ottomans, as the Arabians, into Africa, a lot was distorted. First, with the coming of the Europeans through Egypt, a lot was distorted. That which the people had planted, for the fact that they were submitted to foreign leadership, their leaders killed, those who were educated put to death, people had to start learning by themselves to cook. And even though some of the education had been in the community, because when we talk of education, we have already made it clear here that education is not all about schooling. Schooling is part of education. Some of those values that were embedded in Africa were corrupted as time progressed. Then the Ottomans, when they entered Africa, I mean Muslims, they came to with their own culture to actually institute in Africa. So Africa has a problem of prostitution of ideas and cultures. Different ideas and cultures came into Africa that diluted the basic ideologies that our people used to have and concepts, values that they used to contain. And when that happened, Mr. Liu, a lot died down. It did not end there. When the Europeans grew stronger again, they came back into Africa. That was now in the around the 1400 ADs. Now they came for one purpose: slavery. But in the 1400 ADs, there were universities in a place like Mali, the Malian Empire. For some of you who have studied, do you know that when the Europeans came, they were burning down institutions of learning, burning down books, destroying everything that was possible to permit Africans to realize that they had something like civilization. Then they introduced a wrong thought. I would love to read something, Mr. Liu, which happened in some years after this whole idea of that was in the 2nd of February 1835, where Lord Macaulay, when addressing the British Parliament, he made a statement: I have traveled across the length and breadth of Africa, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture. For if the African think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. That was a lot from England. After having traveled Africa, he saw how Africans had strong values and cultures. They sat down, planned a mechanism which they will use in breaking down the African man. And yes, Mr. Liu, you asked that question. They actually, something happened. That thing is that those who invaded, whom we welcome with our two hands, came in with an intention to take what we have and destroy what we have. And as a result of that, today we talk from the air most of the times. We have learned and gone to school, but still we lack the basics. We lack common values. We do not even like our own culture.
We've embraced democracy.
We have embraced things that are strange to us. And you look at it, an African man would prefer to dress like a European. I just wore a suit for a purpose while I was coming here.
All of us now.
Yeah. An African man would prefer to dress in suit and dress like a European than to dress like an African. Why? It is a psychological problem.
We have been brainwashed.
You have used the word. And culture has disappeared. One time you were talking to me about, why is it that we do not like our own music when it's good?
I love it so much.
Okay. So Africans, and it is very educative, because I will tell you, the African music is a means to educate the people, because in every song is embedded a spiritual principle.
Dr. NDIMANCHO, we are talking about education. We know how it happened in our communities in those days. Even some of us grew to see it, though we pretend that everything was replaced. Not everything was replaced. We know mothers who work on bones, broken bones. They have a way. They don't study that accuse and that, and lots of things are happening in our communities using techniques or knowledge that were gotten from our ancestors. These things were happening amongst us. Some of them are still happening now, but we have not seen our communities organized to create training centers to hand down this. Many persons are dying with those things like that.
That is
what is happening.
Yes, there is something happening. As I said, there was.
But the colonialists are no longer there.
No, really. You should know that there are two cultures that have met. And let me tell you, one culture came with a torch and a gun, and the torch was that what came from over there was light. And if you refuse to believe, they use a gun for you to believe, and that is true. A lot of things happen with the culture that came. There's what we call capitalism, where people have started ownership of things. In our African society, things were owned, were collectively owned. Even your child was not only your child. Now, some of these things have gone away, or like you mentioned, curing of bones and whatsoever, because at that time, people cured almost for nothing. They cure for you, come and give maybe 5 franc coins or whatsoever, and it was done. Or a basket of food or a calabash of palm wine, and it was done. And the argument is, now that the world has changed to a capitalist world as we have today, do you expect somebody to still take 10 francs to cure you? On what does the person live? That is not where the problem has come from. It is because we embraced what was not ours. An African man is a man who was really nurtured.
Social.
He was social, social. And an African man is a man who had that communication, that there was that interdependence between him and his immediate environment.
Community life.
Community life.
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu, you live for me, I live for you, and that was the life. Now, do you expect that to be today with people who build gates that are higher than their houses? Then you cannot even just sit in your house and see what is going on outside. You don't expect that to happen today because each person is fighting for himself and for his family. And that's why Dr. Lee talked about embezzlers. People who embezzle money, they will live 100 years, they will never finish the money, but they still want to embezzle. No, we have shifted from that love, that African communalism, to that capitalist system that we are having today in our society. I think that's just a simple explanation, Zali.
Wrong culture.
Doctor Astinot, you have said your own. Yes. My question is, in those days, we saw how education was done, blacksmithing. That is, people gathered in the community and learned how to do things. There are people who work on bones today. There I know many women who do that. Why can the communities not mobilize to ensure that there is training? We are talking about education. Why don't we learn using that? Because they will not teach what these women are doing. Yes.
A simple answer before Dr. Nick comes in. Just a simple answer before Dr. Nick comes in to enlighten me on more on that. I think that many of these things were handed down. But people have violated the rules of these things. And once you violate the rules of what is African, it goes away. Okay. I think that is a simple.
It's spiritual.
It's spiritual. I think that beliefs too are changing.
Yeah,
it's an issue of belief too that is changing. And when you look at it from an African perspective, the transmission of such skills were very important. For example, at times when we're growing up, when you have problem with your tooth, your grandmother can go to the bush, look for herbs, and heal you. And I think that such values are dying down because of our belief system, and we believe in the Western medicine. And I think that it's an issue of transmission of, we are reluctant. It's a generational issue. And I think that we believe now in technology, we believe in the Western world, we believe in the social media as time, the paradigm.
It's not technology. How do you explain it?
No, it's African technology.
It's African technology.
But we are going the Western way. We are embracing the Western way.
Yes, thank you.
We are embracing the Western way.
I think we are going more emotional now than we are bathing in our emotions. Now listen. Let's just go back a couple of years, right, and look at how we were living and so on. It's true we lived a community life, but the level of development and technology was not much.
Okay.
And the needs were not the same needs as we have today.
Yeah.
And the demographics were not as much. I mean, the communities were small numbers. And people were just struggling for survival. People were in the survival. I mean, it was survival.
No,
really.
I refuse that statement.
They were struggling.
No. There were a lot of wars. Yes. Don't forget, there were a lot of wars, a lot of diseases, and many other things. It's true we had some level of development. If you understand the concept of orbit and atom, we had some level of development. And then we with education and many other things, we have changed that level of functionality, and technology has come in to take us to another level.
We have become barbaric.
But we used to still be, I mean there were those wars that were fought. We are still barbaric, but I'm trying to say that technology has changed a lot, and a lot has changed. Like we say, if you not play politics, politics will play you. Even if Africa wanted to stay where they are, the rest of the world is running at light speed, and we find out that you cannot be isolated. You have to catch up with them, and so what we really need to do now is true that we had something, that's how the Europeans also started, but they developed that technology and then made it and perfected it. That's why today we have these cameras, the planes, and so on and so forth. But the question is, we should be asking, why have we not been perfecting our own technology? Because just the technology as we had doesn't mean that it was the best. And just like the Chinese have their own way of doing things, I guess that's what you're saying. The Africans too would have had their own way of doing it. But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is that science is science. The principles of physics are the principles of physics. All right, the principles of physics are the principles of physics. As long as you can explain those, you can still explain those. If you know those principles of physics and you explain it in your dialogue and somebody understands it, they could still make use of it. So the thing that is really killing us is that we have not grown in technology, because technology is what allows you to change your environment very quickly. Technology is that thing that allows you to solve problems. Technology is that thing that allows you to add value. And we don't have those capacities. What is lacking in our Cameroonian society today, or in Africa, is the lack of technology. Besides those social skills and so on, is the lack of technology. So when we are importing fertilized eggs from we used to imagine this. I was thinking about it today. For every chicken, for every table bird that we have been eating in Cameroon, the egg came from Europe. That's how stupid we've been. Imagine all those white birds that you see in the market and the chicken that we are eating in Cameroon for the last 30 years. For every bird that is killed and eaten, the egg came from Europe. That's just how silly we've been. Yet Kenya solved the problem. Kenya doesn't do that. They've grown their own chicken. They went into their community, like would have gone into our community in Cameroon here. Go to the north. Go to the north. Look at because there are many varieties of chicken. Look at some good cocks and some good hens. Bring them, and then they took them to their research center and crossed them and so on, and came out with breeds that they are using that are more resistant, that produce a lot. You see, like there's some chicken now, they call it Chinese something that has feathers on his legs like that. Yeah, it's a good breed of chicken. So what I'm saying is that we have failed to grow. We are not growing. And like you said, you just sit there and then you just consume what someone else is giving you. I mean, just look at the chicken. I said every white chicken that you see on the market that you put on your plate, the egg, the so-called fertilized egg, came from Europe. And now because of the bird flu in Europe, we are now begging the Brazilians to be sending us those eggs. And yet we have professors, we have agricultural engineers, we have, and they are unable to produce fertilized eggs. That is the problem with us.
Yeah, but the question I wanted you to answer, I don't ask you, is we have anthropologists, sociologists, and they have been, at least they know our history now. Yes, they know how things have, but seemingly nobody is raising this acute problem that we seem to have forgotten about our true way of life and are completely consuming. We've had sociologists and anthropologists in Cameroon for the past 40 years. Doctor, if I may,
yes, it's true.
But nobody is raising, seemingly telling the world that there is a problem with Africans' ways of education.
I want to look at it from another perspective, in the sense that we have that complex, that inferiority complex, and the inferiority complex is affecting our minds. And when you look at Africa, our forefathers, if you look at our forefathers even, they fought wars in Africa with crude weapons and they believe in themselves. And there's an evolution. And that evolution has changed a lot of mindsets. And if you look at, if you want to ask people that, go back to your villages and look at some traces of some anthropological tools that were left after the German war, they will not tell you. And I want to say that Africans have to go back to our indigenous way of life, because our indigenous and community way of life will inform us about our lifestyle, because there has been a change of lifestyle. And education must come with an identity. We must accept ourselves, first of all, like Africans. We are black people. And we are coming from a continent. We have our own values. We have our own way of life. And when we are able to do that, we'll engage in what we call community of practice. Because we used to live in what we call Ngabatu, Umbutu, I am because you are community way of life, where we interact, we learn from each other, we share ideas from each other. But I want to tell you, Mr. Liu, an African man now is the most selfish man, because if an African man have a discovery today, he will hit it from the friends or the brothers to know, because we have a mentality that we are more competitive now, which was not our way of life. Our way of life where we learn from each other was through community way of life, collectivism. And we are practicing now the Western way of life. That is not helping us. I think that sociologists and anthropologists, they have to keep on reminding us about our stories, our narratives, and so on. Because I think that we need to still learn from our forefathers. That people used to learn from folklores. They used to learn from storytelling. They used to learn from family rituals. Where are those things again? They are no more there, because with those family rituals and those folklores, they inform you about issues of the past event that could be transmitted to other generation. You ask children even, what is your name? My name is Joseph. People know their identity even doesn't come from their culture. You cannot even say my name is Neba, my name is Ernest. So we are trying to look at ourselves inferior, and I think that if we want to change, we must love our African tradition. And I want to say that when you look at the African epistemology, we have our own what we call African epistemology, African way of learning, African way of knowledge. And if we want to look at the European genetic epistemology, then we are failing, because we should be using our own natural resources to make end meet. Let me say, for example, there was a child that used natural resources and he formulated almost something like an aircraft. And it happened like that. Those are own technology. So we should be able, I want to say, sociologists should inform people to use their own African tools. We have tools that we can use in our environment. We have resources that we can use in our environment and make constructive learning. We must not wait for the West to bring their own technology for us, because I think that the West have misinformed us about a lot, and the West is bringing what they call acculturation. When they come, they think that our own culture is not inferior. They come and gather our own issues, they gather our ideas, our knowledge, our values. They go and do research about us, and they come now and use us. We buy the things again. So I'm saying that we must go back, we must start tracing it from a cultural perspective. We must go back to our culture, we understand our culture, and we start learning, because I think that education is something that is transmitted. We have to start learning and transferring those basic norms and values.
Prof. Mark,
yes,
we have professors in sociology, professors in anthropology, professors in all of this. How have they helped change our system of education? What is that addition that they are bringing to changing the lifestyle of Africans?
Mr. Leo, the first error of the education most of us we have received is the fact that it is certificate based. So the interest is not actually to contribute something to our communities, but to have a certificate and have a name so that we can have a job.
When there is an occasion, you sit on the high table.
Yes, I'm a professor, doctor.
Nick. They'll put some of us that we are common journalists.
That is
people are professors and doctors.
So that is where we have a pertinent problem, because we're not schooling with the intention of developing our community. We're schooling with the intention of having a certificate which could permit us to have a job, as job-oriented education. And Mr. Leo will tell you that in its reality, that is the greatest problem we have in Cameroon. That is the greatest problem we have in Africa. Schooling, and let me say this, the main purpose of education, because I will say there is just one purpose of education, which is self-realization. So once you are educated and you do not know who you are, you have not been educated. You are still so ignorant. Most people have learned in fact they have become sociologists, but in reality they do not even know who they are. Because the moment you get to know who you are, Mr. Leo, it gives you the capacity to actually identify problems in the community that are related to who you are to solve. So you start adding value based on what you have learned. But look at it. We have been educated or gone to school. We have been schooled, but practically not educated. Most of us, we have been schooled but not educated. If you look at the way China is today,
Professor,
yes.
can we all answer this question? I'm worried, Dr. Nick.
What's the question?
What do we really solve?
What's the question?
What problems do we solve?
Let me just learn.
What problem do we solve in our
There are a lot of problems.
No.
There are a lot of problems.
Sincerely,
In our communities, Mr.
all the doctors, we have
Doctor-
thousands of doctors in
and
Cameroon.
professors, and they solve no problem because of our bad education.
Let me learn.
The truth is that, Mr. Liu, when you look at education in Cameroon,
Dr. Musi, let me learn. Let me learn.
Let him learn, yes.
Prof. Land.
Doc, in Cameroon, like I practically said, there are many doctors whom we have actually said we have been schooled, we will not be educated. We do not have that capacity to contribute value, to add value. We have not been, that has not come to us. We have not been trained for that. And so you practically have battalion of schooled individuals with big certificates but have no possibility and capacity to add to their society. And that is the reason why you have a crowd of professors in the government, not only the government, in our community, but they always will look at the president. You hear somebody who sit and say high instructions from the president because he has.
The president thinks for him.
He does not even have the mind to think. So they lack the capacity to think and lack the capacity to add value. They can only get.
Dr. Michael NDIMANCHO. Maybe Yakwata is different. You live in a community in Douala. Sincerely, I'm sure many of you people.
Dr. Book. Of course, we are talking about the issue of Dr. Books. Yeah. and it's true. You see, as I said, we have all been brainwashed. Because the essence of education is to solve a problem. The essence of education is to solve a problem. If we cannot solve the problem for which we are educated, then we have failed in our education. And it is true.
Take to the street here. That problem was given to us.
Exactly. Listen, and that stems from where? It's because we do not believe in transformative knowledge. We believe in transmission of information. That is where the problem is. Now you hear somebody quote and say, I did my PhD in Harvard. I did it. This is what people want to hear, and then you put on your fresh coat and you're going around the quarter and you're boosting. That is where the problem is coming from. And as I said, the white man tried and succeeded in bringing us to where we are. If you can read The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, he only visited the Belgian Congo, but he wrote about the whole Africa. And I bet you Chinua Achebe has tried to overturn that image of Africa in its things fall apart, and it was not easy. And that is where we are taking from, because we think that we are a people to be re-civilized. We think that what is ours is not correct. And this even came with what? It came with, even the early missionaries. They made us believe that. We have even talked about the kind of the geniuses that we have, people who could do a lot of things through traditional means and whatsoever. The missionaries came and discouraged us from that. And now we begin to think that only modern mixing is religious or is spiritual or whatever, I don't know. And our own, if you can cure some, I know so many people will not take mixing, and this our natural mixing. They will say we don't know what they are practicing on before selling. This is where our problem is, because we have refused to solve the problem of our society, and we are looking for other people to come and solve our problem. And that's why we keep joining NGOs and whatsoever in Europe. We keep, joining an organization that will come to Africa and assist us. Everybody wants to be at the bossy end, whereby you sit and you are able to give aid to people in Africa in your community. Maybe your own quarter. I'm sure there are a lot of people with NGOs and small and those kind of societies around who actually just want to load it over the people around you. That is what we are. We want
I
to
say
do.
when there's occasion, they'll put me somewhere. You people who are doctors here, you people chop the leg.
And then we come to transmit what we have learned to you. We only want you to recite what you will learn. We don't want you to do anything about what we learn.
I don't know, like doctor, but are we not also embarrassed that when there is a problem in every community, those people who call themselves doctors and professors and all-knowing community, they also sit and face the same problem?
Yes.
Nobody can
Yes.
solve a problem.
Yes.
That's right. Let's be more practical here, because when we come into the community, there are two kinds of problems in the community. There could be social problems in the community. When there are social problems in the community, you know, a lot of people will talk, give ideas and so on. Everybody will be there to say this is the best way, this is the best way. But when it comes to physical problems, that is where the problem is. It doesn't matter, you could be a doctor in anything, but if it's a physical problem that you understand nothing about, you are finished. Well, let me explain. Okay, there is no water in the community, and we have to dig a trench and lay water pipes and so on. You could have all your doctors, but if you don't have the technology of how to bring water to the village, it's no use. Are you getting what I'm saying? And people are tired of storytelling. People want problems to be solved. And therefore, when we come to the community these days, people don't want you to come and sit like sit in the bar and blow your hot air and so on. No. We have this problem. Can you solve it? Fine. If you cannot solve it, forget it. That is the bottom line now. And we've got to learn to be more practical. I said the knowledge should be used in solving the practical problems in the community. So, and it's in the course of solving the practical problems in the community that we create wealth. And what are some of those problems? Problems that have to do with food, problems that have to do with health, problems that have to do with security, housing, all of this, wealth creation. Like today, what are some of the greatest problems in Cameroon? Problems of the youth. So let's ask all our professors, what shall we do to provide jobs and opportunities for our youth? Ask them and see how they'll answer the question.
Government. We saw PhD holders crying.
You want to work in government?
Yeah, everybody. And by the way, let us challenge all our PhD and our professors, everybody and all those ministers and so on. We have a lot of, I'm speaking now to the nation, we have a lot of youths in the nation who have no jobs. Riding on Bensikin, that's not the issue, that's not it. What are we going to do so that we give these young people jobs in the private sector? Because most of the time people are thinking Konku. No, Konku is full. There are only 350,000 civil servants and there's no room there. What shall we do to give meaningful jobs to our youth in the private sector? All those professors and ministers should answer that question.
Okay, they should answer that question. Our history, is it lost? Because we claim that things were burnt.
Yes.
But we know that in the past, these histories were told now. If you go to every village.
That's right. You can burn physical things, but
Yes.
in the mind,
Every village, they know their history. They know how they came. They know. Is it not just an issue of complex where we think that what is ours is not as valuable as what has come from the white man?
Yeah, I earlier said here that we have an issue of inferiority complex.
Yeah.
Mr. Liu, go to a local community and a shoeman that produce you a shoes and give you will not want to buy. You ask, is the shoe coming from Italy? Is the shoe coming from France? The truth is that if we want to change our educational system in this country to be better, we also have to create an enabling environment. And that enabling environment is very, very important for our students, in the sense that Dr. Nick is there. He's in the private sector. If we change the mindset of our youth, not to be Konku based, because what I've seen in Cameroon is that they have trained Cameroonians to be Konku based. After certification, you think that you can only have a Konku and you gain a job. I'm a psychologist. I think that with me, how can I shape my environment?
Open a clinic.
I can have a clinic. And I also think that people are suffering from trauma, pain, psychosocial pain in the community. I can work on the minds, I can do a lot of therapy, because I've done it a lot on many children who have dropped out from school. So what I'm saying is that our education is not solving real life problems. People are looking for self-actualization. I want to actualize. I want to have this name. I want to have this title. I want to have this personality. But they are not looking at, after school, what can you do? How can you use your hands?
Self-realization.
How can you use your head and your hand to solve real life problems? Our educational system has forgotten about that. I'm in the university. Most of the time students are talking about grade when they leave school, because I think that there's what we call study skills. University students even should be able to teach, work, and do part-time work. But at the end of the day, you will not even see some doing part-time work that they can gather some experiences. Go to Nigeria, what they do is that after your first degree, you go again for training, where you gain potentials, when you gain abilities and skill through the youth service. And I think that we have to change our orientation. An issue of mindset. I used to buy the idea of Dr. Nick a lot with entrepreneurship, because I think that the Western world is growing fast because they are looking at our weaknesses and they want to use our weaknesses to challenge us. Look, for example, the other day we saw the Chinese curry. Why is it that our agricultural students in Cameroon cannot say that cassava is good in this place in the littoral region, cassava is good in, and they carry out experiment with some of the seeds to see how they can open a big plantation as cassava is concerned as a university, so that at the end, even when those students graduate, they can still work on those cassava farm. They can still continue. There can be a continuity where they gain skills and they are using the skills. They are productive, because we're talking about productive education. So what I think is that Cameroon lacks that productive education. It's all about theory, and concepts. So we have to start changing the orientation.
Theory, and concepts.
I know that it's not my turn to have the microphone now, but you mentioned something, and I just wanted to cue in so that we speak to the authorities. Now, there is something going on in the training in our universities that we ought to really correct, otherwise we'll be in deep trouble. You know, it's been for a long time now. Like I would employ master's students from the University of Boya who graduated with a master's degree in medical medical laboratory technology, but they would be keen in teaching the children the theory, but refuse categorically to go to the lab. And it's later on, then for the laboratory techniques, I would employ the children who went to the to the local professional to be showing the students what has to be done. And I came to realize that it's because as the students were studying in the university, they avoided the laboratory. So sometimes they go around and have a master's in, and then they refuse the laboratory, not because they are ill intentioned, it's because they don't know, and then they shroud it. Is it making some sense here?
Yes.
It's very important that we pay attention to that. Then the other day on social media, I was talking to some of our elderly professors, and it turned out there's something that our government needs to correct. It's very important if we want to succeed. Listen, if we want to grow in this nation, and if we want our children to participate in development and wealth creation and create jobs, let us rethink our universities. When you have a university and you have a department, call it let's say carpentry.
Good.
Make sure we should make it a policy that when there is a department of carpentry in a university, the university should open a factory, a state-of-the-art factory in that university, so that we produce furniture, not the cat and nail we have on our street. We produce the furniture as it is in Europe, as it is in China. That way, we up our game, and then the university begins to make money. Then children begin to see how money is really made. It's because by the way, when I asked the professor, why can't you do that? Because I mean, there were a couple of things. He said it was about the law in Cameroon. The law forbids the universities to create factories And the reason was that there would be this thing called competition déloyale, that the fact that the university is not there to compete
with the state.
not with the state, with privately owned businesses. And that's why we are killing it. We got it all wrong. We have to allow university, even if it means putting a little tax on it, we have to allow the universities to create real industries, not makeshift industries, real industries, and be productive. Sorry, I took the microphone. I just wanted to insist on this.
Okay, I've not read any message today. Let me take some. This one says, good evening, dear panelists, such an interesting topic. Education is key to all. More grace, Mr. Liu. Thank you very much. Good evening to you. Kalis Chuka watching us from Yaoundé. Pilo say good evening to you all. We should base our educational system towards agriculture because it's the backbone of our economy. Pilo writing from Kumba. Hi, Mr. Liu. I'm John. I have not followed my media prime for about a week. I hope that you and your panelists are not talking about 1960, 1961 Anglophone. Okay. Okay, United Nations. No, we are not talking about that today. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about this resolution 1608. Good evening, Mr. Liu and all the panelists. I love the way Mr. BUSIE is talking about the education system in Cameroon. Awuru Romaric is writing from the United Arab Emirates. Good evening to the team on board. I think the most important part of education is the informal education. It has to begin in our homes. Parents need to transmit good behavior and values into their children. We have been carried away by modernism, forgetting who we are, e.g. our dressing pattern. Some parents see dresses made out of African fabric as inferior. Some parents abandon children for hours, even years, without bothering about their behavior. Okay, Ake is writing from Bomenda. Good evening to you, Ake. Good evening, Mr. Kum and panel. I'm Kimberly, writing from Edinau. To fix our system, we must begin from the teacher training colleges, especially the basic education sector, where teachers are not trained to handle specific subjects, because a teacher cannot give learners what he or she does not have. Good evening to you. This one says, slavery and colonialism distorted the African personality. We, the young generation, needs to rebrand Africa to the world. Greetings to your panel, Mr. Liu, most especially my Commonwealth comrade, Dr. NDIMANCHO, Michael, Dr. Binda Goloff. Okay, good evening to you too, Doctor. Mr. Liu, good evening. Cameroon education is not. I am Silas, a waiter for Yaoundé. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Liu. How can we be fine? Our father is angry with us. The demon of money and power has entered Africa. Sisi is writing from Limbe. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Thanks for this important topic. Let all our guests in the studio tell us the problems they have solved, given their personalities as well. Erudite doctors. Dr. Christopher is writing from Douala. Yeah, good evening to you, Doctor. This one says, the solution to African educational mess will only come when we shall go back to our roots. That is, Egyptology should be taught to all Africans, elementary right up to the university. I don't know that term. Someone says, good evening, Mr. Liu. Stand with the Prof 100%. People are schooled in Cameroon are not educated. What we need in our system are experts and mentors. Okay, you say keep up building, we will do that. Good evening to all in the studio. Please, I don't want us to blame the West for our problems. I look at the problems of Africans lies in the hands of Africans. Our backwardness lies in the fact that most of the educated Africans went to the European schools and decided to embrace the Western culture. Look at the Jamaican way of life. They don't depend much on the Western culture. Secondly, our government too has worsened the situation by believing that the white man's system is the best. If we had followed the example of Julius Nyerere and Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who started dreaming of an Africa for Africans, I think that only government policies can help us to develop ourselves. Chrysanthus Kum writing there from Mutengene. Good evening, Mr. Kum. Africa is blessed. If Africa is not breeding, the world is finished. A civilization started in Africa, but the white man have made us to become so inferior to believe and think that a good thing can come only from them. Okay, Dr. Okay, African SMS from Dr. Isidore, a holistic doctor in modern traditional medicine in Bamenda. Good evening to you. Apostle Ambe is watching. Good evening to you. He says that we have a Ministry of Scientific Research that is there to tender motions of support to the head of state. The difference between education in Africa and Europe is that research is in research. Africans have nuclear chemists who are lecturers, while European and Americans have nuclear chemists that produce bombs. Okay, Professor Mark Anthony, we are talking about what is happening in our school system as well as our informal system in Africa. Do we think that there is acute need for a curriculum change in Africa? But is that also very easy, given that most of the things that happen in Africa are tied to politics?
Mr. Leader, is the greatest problem we have, considering the fact that you just heard Dr. mention that was discussing with the senior professor, and he said the main problem is coming from the law, which has to do with the educational policies and laws of the country. And considering the fact that most of our curriculums, in fact, let me say the curriculum that were used in teaching our elders, whom today are teaching us, and were actually is a curriculum that was built by Europeans, with the intention of actually shaping our minds to be these certificate-oriented individuals on which we have become today. And we have grown in the same, so the system is in place. Because we might want to blame ourselves, but we shouldn't blame ourselves to an extent and forget where the real problem is coming from. We have now identified it. If we do not change it now, then it will become a problem for us. We inherited the wrong educational system, and that educational system was never meant to help us become productive. So if we have to be able to change that and give the best, we need the government to work along with us, because I'll tell you, it is possible to come up with good and lofty ideas, but as long as your students are going to go to school and write a public exam with all the learning you might give them, the teachings you might give them, which is actually out of the box, they will go and sit in an examination that the government has set, which it is in the box. You need to enter that box to answer that question before you come out and walk out of the box. And that's where there's a problem. So we need the government of Cameroon, and as well as most African governments, to project and, let's say, redefine the kind of education we need. And I believe that many professors, doctors have already identified that problem. And I will be sincere in telling you this, it has been tabled already to the ministry. It's not a new thing that we are talking today.
Okay.
And so you heard there was a period of time that they came up with the idea of bachelor, master's, doctorate. And the intention was to help African young people to be able to produce. But it has so much limitations.
Okay, it has
so much limitations. And so to round this point, Mr. Leo, if Africans can get to the place where we look at what the Chinese people did, because I always want to look at them, look at the people that were colonized like we were. 60 years back, we were in the same place. In a short period of 60 years, let me just say 50 years, they have transformed their entire communities, not because they were not colonized, they were colonized. I am sure they also gave them a curriculum, but They came back, kept that aside, sat down and defined their curriculum based on their community. They are not learning Europe because Europe is not in Asia. We are here in Africa learning Europe when we are in Africa. Our environment does not correspond with what we are learning. So we need to shape our education to be in relation to the environment and the problems in which we are facing. Because if, for example, people are learning agriculture and looking at agriculture, learning the climate system of Cameroon, not
the one in
Norway, not elsewhere, we will be able to, let me use the word, localize what we are doing. And once that happens, Mr. Liu, we can become very productive. So I believe that every African is a god, and they have what it takes to make that difference.
I want us to stay very contextual.
Yeah.
We are talking about education, holistic education. I want somebody to explain why, with all the education we have acquired, I mean knowledge from schools, the morals in our society is just something else. But also, are we not suffering because we have been taught with examples from out of Africa? For example, let's take economics. We want people to study how to do business, and we have professors who have not done, who have not come up with theories why somebody like Power Guarantees was successful. How Photo was succeeding, why somebody was supposed to be doing a project already on how a young man like NGWANYAM is doing business, why he's succeeding. All the examples are about European examples, and can this help African children succeed?
I think we are coming back actually to the same basic problem that we have evoked here, that we are Eurocentric.
Yes, but these examples, all these examples are given by African professors.
Of course, of course. Everybody wants to quote everybody wants to quote Europe to sound, big in whatsoever. I can't remember how many years I spent in secondary school studying the parts of a grasshopper. And that was, a kind of a lesson, and it was a big lesson for that the biology teacher who was transforming knowledge to me. So I think we also have the will of our government. We should also talk on other sides. We should have the will of our government in establishing that enabling environment for some of these things to happen. There is a viewer who asked what we who are sitting here have done for our society, and I'm sure we cannot escape from that comment.
No, but you're already doing something. You are raising the problem.
Exactly. It's not enough. As people say, we are all tourists. We want practice. And I just want to say that, particularly, I've been the National Secretary General of my Village Development Association for 12 years. And through that, we have brought water to the village, we have electricity, we have done a lot of things. I think that is something. Education is not just about doing what you do, it's also about transforming your society. So I think actually we have to leave education also to educationists, because we will have a lot of quacks too in the circle of education. People have come to make business. We need an entrepreneurial example like Dr. Nick, of course, who have done it, who know exactly what he's promoting. We have a lot of people who do not know anything about education, who have schools. Most of the schools, especially in Douala, are owned by those who have never done, or have not even gone above a secondary school, and who do not know. They are not the one who run them. They take their brothers and sisters to run those schools, and they do it in terms of business. We also have schools that are just empty. You go to a school, you cannot find any single library. There's no internet. How do students thrive? It is a very, very difficult thing. How do students solve the problems that they are facing in the society? It's a very, very big problem. In some occasions, we have even had areas here in Cameroon where there are not even buildings for children. Because when we say holistic, it means that what? There should be an enabling environment. There should be an enabling environment. We have talked about the issue of ethics. I remember, like in my Catholic University, what we do at the end of your degree program, when you are going out, we take you out for what we call saison d'éthique. Because we have realized that after acquiring that knowledge in technology, engineering, whatsoever, there is something that you are going to lack as you're going for the job market. And that is what is spoiling our world today, because people lack the moral behavior. People lack the responsibility when it comes to job output. How would you serve somebody well if you do not have the conscience, the moral conscience to be able to serve that people? And that's why you have people who are so rude. You go to an office or to a bank or whatsoever, you hear get the way somebody responds to you, and then you begin to ask yourself, but you are being paid because of me. Why do you respond to me in that manner? That is the issue of ethics. We need to learn the ethics of our jobs, and that is what many schools are lacking today.
Spiritual education.
Education, it is very, very fundamental.
Spiritual education.
So if I can continue to answer that question.
Okay.
Remember when we started, I said that education, 25% is those certificates and the knowledge and the technology, and that 75% was attitude. And therefore, we're coming to the same thing. When you don't have the right attitude, when your character is bad, it doesn't matter what you learned in school, you'll be no good. And we will see that, in our schools these days, especially the so-called government schools, there's not much emphasis on character, and children just grow like weed. It's very unfortunate. Some of us were lucky to go to mission schools, and in mission schools, you have a way of thinking, the way you are brought up. Respect was key, but in most of these schools today, there's not much respect. I mean, when you put a discipline master in most of these government schools, the discipline master are just as bad as the students, and so it's like having some of the people who are even in the law or in the courts or police or gendarmes who are worse than the people on the streets. Yeah. So it's something we need to really work on it, otherwise we'll be in real trouble.
Is that not where the problem is? Because if Africa finds itself where it is today, it is because those who went through the schools
it's unfortunate. We need to repollinate ourselves with the right things. We need to redefine what works and what doesn't work. Now we kind of like just drift around like sheep, and we keep multiplying ourselves without finding out whether the quality of the seeds is good. It's very, very important. Now that said, let me make these statements. Everything we have been talking about, African education, European education, whatever, and a lot of mix. It doesn't matter what the mix is. Let us say that everything in this world doesn't fall. The way things work is not based on your emotions. It's based on principles. Principles are natural laws. When you understand natural laws and you use them, whether you are using them in China or in Africa or Europe, it works. But when you break the laws, or go against the laws, you will pay the price. And Africa has not been using principles a lot, and that's why we keep spinning in circles. That said, there are a couple of books that I keep reminding people to read. We were talking a moment ago about power guarantee and so on. What is it about them? There is this book, Why A Students Work for C Students and B Students Work for Government. Yeah. The book is written by Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. If everyone could read and understand what is in that book, all these arguments will be out of the window. There is a problem. Why is it that our best students, the A students, work for C students? And who is a C student? A C student is probably that one who was not the brightest in the class. A C student that C also stands for someone who is creative. And this C student, because he has been failing, he knows how to fail and then rise again. Like Christ was going to carrying the cross, he would fall and rise again. But A students are people who are not used to failing, and therefore they are afraid to invest, afraid to do. They just want to go and work for somebody and depend on a salary. And when you're on a salary, you're not going to go very far. And a lot of people on salary become very crafty. So it's very tricky. Like we've mentioned that book, we've mentioned our Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There is No Excuse by Brian Tracy, and then the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you will remember, Mr. Leo, many of our people, we go to the schools, we go to university, we read only the books that allow us to pass the exams. We don't read any other books out of those things for self-development. That's the word. We don't empower ourselves. We don't even watch YouTube. When we go to YouTube, we watch the music or some funny things. But we don't do those things that build us, that build our capacities. We don't learn new traits. Okay, I'm a medical doctor, but I can tell you how to multiply fish. I have learned a lot. I know how planes fly. I know how mechanical, how those agricultural machines are working, because I try to learn those things on YouTube. Go out of what you have learned and build yourself. It's very important. And remember that things work on principles. You know, rain falls on everybody. You plant, it will grow. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Liu. I'm Kelly Tucker watching from Douala. The school system only teaches us how to go to school, get good grades, get high paying jobs, but doesn't give students room for creativity. Rather, the student who breaks the normal of not thinking like other students is instead sanctioned. Until there is a curriculum revision, we will keep training educated illiterates in Cameroon. Okay, a new word I learned today: educated illiterates. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. Our educators are economists of speech rather than action. Talk and talk, doing nothing. Muna Paul, writing from Fingen. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Bernard, watching live from Bamenda. I believe the problem with our system of learning in Africa as a whole is highly dependent on the fact that we lack self-confidence in our crafts. Okay. Yes, we've raised that already here. Good. Greetings, my Media Prime. I write to you as the president of Cameroon Association of Registered Nurses and Midwives, one of the professional nursing and midwifery association in Cameroon. We would be celebrating the International Day of the Nurse on the 12th of May. In line with this, we will be organizing a leadership seminar on the 10th and 11th of May. I wish to appeal for time on your media to share with fellow nurses, midwives, and the public about the Nurses Day and our activities on the D-Day. I will be glad. Okay. Ngang Nelson, thank you for using this opportunity to say this. I'm sure last year we had nurses on the same platform. You were there.
Yes, I was around.
Yes,
I remember.
not too good. The experience was not too good. You were embarrassed. So I'm telling you, yes, it's true. Yes. It was not too good.
Yes,
but
we should get people who can come and actually express themselves properly.
I think that important. I will gladly receive you people on this platform to share your challenges, especially in the context of COVID-19. Tell us how you are striving to survive, to take care of yourselves, and then take care of most of the patients. It's true.
Yeah, can I just say something? Yes. Can I have the camera? Let me say something to the general public. My Media Prime is a very open platform. And if you have things to share to improve on the community, and you get in touch with Mr. Kum Leonard, he will always give you an opportunity to do that. But it's very important that when you're in a group or you have to come to this media platform, make sure that amongst you pick on somebody who, number one, who understands the subject matter, number two, who knows how to communicate, because people are watching from out there and want you to be able to communicate with them. But some people just come here just to say, I appeared on television, and then they have camera fright and all those kind of things, and they cannot really communicate, and becomes very embarrassing for the anchor. So when you're coming, make sure you know what you're talking about, make sure that you're fluent, make sure your language is good, make sure that you are dressed decently, and look into the camera and smile.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Liu. So the nurses, organize yourselves. You get 4 very good nurses. I will gladly receive you guys here. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I love this program very much, but what I will love to tell the young Cameroonians is that your failure begins when you start hoping to be employed by the government after education. Let's learn to be creative like the Nigerian youths, okay? This one says, Egyptology is what is going to bring us out from this colonial web to our original position during our pre-colonial days. Okay. This one says, this is a great topic, Mr. Liu. I have always loved to educate Africans to love their own. Someone told me that if you are going to any ministry, you must wear a coat. This is bad. So everything that is African is bad. I love to go African wide to educate my people that Africa is a great land and only needs people who love this land to control it. I'm patient, writing from Douala. This one says there are several doctors and a professor as panelists. Let each of at a time tell what practical issue he has
We have a
solved.
lot of
I've
practical
heard
things.
of trauma self-actualization set by one. Dr. There, here is these terms related to the topic at hand, that is changing the educational system, talking doctors. Okay. Laura, I'm inviting you here. Join us tomorrow. Schools in Africa is just for formalities, full of theory but practically nil. We train engineers, especially in Cameroon, on air. Okay. Tabot Machiavelli, my good friend from Yaoundé, says, greetings everyone in the studio. The government is adamant to change. They all lack innovative, vocational, creative skills. Their ideas are based on who to be replaced in a political maneuver. Speak from now till tomorrow. The regime in place won't put a good and genuine educational policy in order to revamp the archaic ones. Yes, but those of you watching us, you could change things from your individual perspectives. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the wonderful cream of panelists. Just joining in because of a new, like they say, charity begins at home. We need to go back to our roots and start believing that we can do it by ourselves and in our own way, and it will be wonderful. Daisy, good evening to you. Always watching from Kuma.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Leo. There's this guy called Plato, Socrates, and others. They say people are born good, but society spoil them.
Okay.
And I think that morality, as we're talking, is very important. We have to start building values from the informal sector back at home. I think that parents must transmit values to their children. We have seen situations, because we talk about education, it's holistic. We have seen situations where children are killing others today in school. They are killing their teachers. When we are growing up, such things cannot happen in our society. You also ask a question on how can we shape the curriculum. There are many ways in which we can shape the curriculum of Cameroon. For instance, look at our primary school curriculum. It's so bulky for a child. Look at the cognitive level of a child of a primary school. Let me say
Sincerely speaking,
I
pity my son.
Yes.
Because I know very well that what is taught to him, he cannot understand. I pity, yes.
Okay, Mr. Leo, you look at a primary one child. A primary one child goes to school and she's learning about 14 or 18 subjects a day.
What's happening?
There's what the back of the child, the back is so happy with so many textbooks. And I want to talk about this. It's very important. There's what we call Bloom's taxonomy.
It seems as if some people go to Yaoundé and see ministries to
buy their to sell books. There's a selection of books. There is a lot of business. It's all about business. So I want to say that there's what we call Bloom's taxonomy. And you cannot be teaching a primary 1 child something that a primary 6 child should comprehend. Or because a primary 6 child should learn through analysis, through synthesis, through evaluation. But a primary 1 child can learn a bit, because a primary 1 child cannot understand abstract. Because for you to make a primary 1 child understand abstract, the classroom must be resource based. So we are pleading on policymakers that they need to reshape our curriculum. For instance, when we were growing up in primary school, when we were going to primary school, we discovered that a child will be going to school, a child will have a school farm.
Yes.
And having a school farm, you are able to know that you're supposed to weed at this time, you're supposed to add manure at this time, and you build skills that help you even at home to assist your own parents. I think that our curriculum in primary school has to be reshaped. We have to make our curriculum, we have to bring in specialization. Specialization is very important. I think that Dr. Nick, as somebody who's involved in entrepreneurship, knows it. When you are specialized, you have more skills. And I think that our children learn a lot. At the end, they are master of nothing.
Okay.
Because if you learn about 14 subjects in primary school, you come to secondary school from 5, you learn about 10 subjects, and then you are reducing. At the end, no specialization. I think that specialization should start at the level of primary schools. They should niche the subjects so that children can anchor in future and become more productive and skillful and creative and innovative, because education should make people innovative, bring new ideas to solve problems. And you also asked a question about power guarantee. We have economists here in Cameroon. Many a time they use principles abroad to solve our own realities.
Power guarantee is gone.
Yes,
Futu is gone.
And so
Kaji the Futu is gone. Soen is gone.
Yes.
Munkam is gone,
and so on.
But we have projects that are
let me just land by saying, there's one thing also with us in the academia. There's what we call the American Psychological Association. We do research as scholars, but we borrow references from the white. To refrain.
All review of literature is
abroad. I review articles abroad, but I follow.
You must talk about the house of publication.
I review articles from schools abroad. I review articles from schools abroad, but I follow by their own morphology. So I think that we need to come out with our own African research methodology.
Is it
the ending is that even with scholars we do research, but the research is being lost. Children do a lot of research, it's not being used. It's not being utilized. It's not being utilized.
If you go to universities, you have researches.
It's not being used.
Yeah,
I'm sure we have even discussed that in the forum.
Yes.
You have research about the topic of President Paul Biya. These
silence.
people who have done things in camp, they have gone. Nobody is researching on them.
Let's talk about say something about research and education again in Cameroon. And I would just want minute, and I would pick up because you mentioned curriculum. Let me and Bloom's taxonomy and what. Let me just say in a very simple language so that we really understand where the problem is. You know, we have these words where, when, who, what. You know that there are about 6 or 7 of them. Now, yes, when you build a curriculum, like you first said, education was you are trying to help the child bring something out of the child. So the way you craft the curriculum, the questions that you ask can bring things out of the child, and therefore it's a set of questions. Now watch me. We have our current curriculum in Cameroon from nursery school to university is based on when did Cameroon have independence? Who is the Minister of Higher Education? What happened in 1940? And then, so we have the when, the where, the what, and the how. I mean, 80 to 90% of what we study is based around that. But countries like Singapore, South Korea that we've been talking about, China, their curricula are based on 3 questions. What is it that we want our children to study? Why should they study it? That's the what question, the why question, okay,
how.
And then the how. That how now allows them to understand and do. That's the practical. So why must you study how to grow? Okay, what we want to grow rice. Why? Because we need to feed our people. How? You see, then they do it, and then the rice is there. That is the way the curriculum is crafted. So we must change the curriculum in our country to follow the what, the how, and the why. Otherwise, we are finished. We can go for the next 100 years. If we are doing the when, the where, and what, no, it will not work. And then, just before you take back the microphone, when NDIMANCHO was speaking about China, let me say it again. We've said it. 40 years ago, they had a president, a chairman. I think it was Mao Zedong. And this is what Mao Zedong did. Watch me. He changed 70% of all the Chinese universities into polytechnics, and it is those polytechnics that have brought in technology and laid the foundation for this modern China, for their wealth creation and so on. If he had not done that, China would not be what she is today. So it's important that in Cameroon we should not go doing research to find out how they did it. That is how they did it. And then one statement again about research. How comes many of our universities, our professors are doing so much research and it's not useful? It's not useful again because the questions that we ask are the wrong questions during our research, and most of our research is based on attitude, knowledge, attitude, and practices. But while people are measuring things, are going on the farm, finding out why this corn is not doing well in this field and so on. That's the kind of research they are doing. Why are yams growing here and not over there? What is the best cassava that we can have? That is practical research.
Okay. Professor Mark Anthony, we see agriculture is the backbone of our economies in Africa. Let's take the case of Cameroon. How much investment is the government putting into innovation in Africa? How many institutions, I'm talking about universities, that are created to train young Cameroonians to explore that which we are endowed with?
Of recent, I've seen the Cameroon government actually establishing the University of Bamenda, having I think it's a faculty on education, on agriculture. I think the same thing has come to Yaoundé, and might be in Boya too.
Boya is there.
So
okay.
Those are at least some steps they are taking, but we can't actually say those steps are enough. Why? Because those schools, as we are talking, for example, if you go to Boya, you see students who are doing agriculture who do not know how, they have never seen the color of a tractor. But if you go down to the south, there are tractors there that...
No, they have tractors.
They have tractors.
In Boya, yes.
Okay, then that's good. You go, I was talking based on the situation where we have tractors that I saw in the south doing we had a kind of agro-pastoral stuff. Tractors were carried down to the south and abandoned there, and grass actually consumed them. That is a way in which they could assist. I don't think that it is even in our universities that agriculture is best done. Those mothers in the farm. When I was growing, I grew with I spent some time with my grandmother. This woman, as I'm talking to you, she's still alive. She had a rice farm. She had a wheat farm. She had cows. The husband had cows. My grandmother used to have cows who were actually plowing the farm for her. So I grew up in that kind of environment where farming was so scientific.
I remember in my village, I remember in my village, tractors would come and hectares were
so
yeah.
So just imagine, I grew with that grandmother who had this technology. I think she should be in her 90s now. But she had this technology to use animals to till her farms.
They were everywhere.
And
but they no longer exist.
She had a lot vast farms in those days. The question is, why is it that today, rather, we do not have rice farms like we used to have?
Yes, and we are talking of second generation agriculture. Something that we already practice.
We have double rice even. We are not even
encouraging. Those are some of the things that, if you ask that question, I will tell you the government of Cameroon seems to have fallen from the ladder in which they were they were in. The government of Cameroon has descended from that ladder. We used to help China with food.
We moved away from the Green Revolution.
And now we are practically depending on the same China to eat.
We import fish, rice, almost everything.
Gari, which we produce, which we have farms. So, Mr. Leo, I just feel like we have gotten to a place where the whole idea of industrialization is now lacking in our education. That industrialization which we were supposed not to bring from outside, but to actually develop from what we have. Because I will tell you, if you go back to ask my grandmother, she can best teach children on how to raise animals and how to do this farming.
Use the animals to plow.
Using those ancient, those are techniques that she inherited from her own grandmother. I think that if we sit down, those are the things we're supposed to be researching and studying, sitting on the feet of those people to research, study, then we improve on, in order so that our universities can be the best. The whole idea of importing agricultural technology from Europe is not what is going to help Africa, because I'll tell you this. The soil over there is completely different from what we have here.
Yeah, but where are we even applying the
technology? So we are struggling to actually import when we have all it takes. Okay. So we have a problem, Mr. Leo, which I will identify. We need to industrialize our different fields of education. And once we are industrializing, it is not supposed to be foreign technology. The technology is something that we all have. Like the doctor actually said, these things are principles, and it is applied everywhere.
Okay.
But we need to develop them in relation to environment.
Okay.
It's necessary.
Hello, Mr. Leo. We have a system that does not give ears to Akrai, I'm an anthropologist. Do you have confidence in Cleda's medicine? Yes, I do. This is just one aspect. What has state institutions do with PhD thesis already in the libraries? Westernization is almost swallowing us up. Madam Anne, writing from Boya, Doctor, you say something because you go to all the universities. Can
I answer that question? Can I answer that question? Yeah, you see, we have a lot of research lying in our universities. If we go and take out those researches and begin to find out which ones actually bring practical solutions to the people, you know, if we look for those practical ones and put them to use, it will be great. But the students themselves who did the research are not using it. That's the problem, and are blaming the government. That's the problem.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Liu. I'm Brandon from Suomi. Good evening. I appreciate the job you guys have been doing. I have been following your programs for a long time. The one today is also an interesting one. I know the education of Cameroon is not the best, but the biggest problem in Cameroon is the government. They squeeze out the private sector and make everybody to believe that the government is the only source of employment. Okay, good evening to you. Hello, Mr. Liu. Good evening once more. I wish to say, let this government just help his people create farms to market a route. Okay, you're writing from Chang. Good evening to you. G. Lucas, writing from Boya, says the main point in education is to create and implement what we get from schools. Once an education system cannot support creativity, it is only wise to change it. Good evening to you. Lucas, we should be watching from my 16, I'm sure. Hello, Mr. Liu. The main problem with our system is that it is not professionalized. Why don't we have topics like barbing 101, hairdressing 101, money 101, right from the basic level. Franklin Atanga is writing from Bamenda. Good evening to you, Franklin. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and everyone in the studio. Please, let's stop blaming the West and focus on changing better the little given to us. If civilization and big universities started in Africa, then why didn't we colonize the Europeans? Our bad educational system is due to the political policy in Cameroon. Every nation depends on good education. Davison is writing from Betua. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm talking that people with technical skills should be teachers in our skills like builders, mechanics. Okay. Dennis, good evening to you. Your message is not too clear. Good evening, sir. I'm Bertrand, a CIU student in North Cyprus. Cameroon needs a total revamping of its education system from nursery to tertiary sections. There is total absence of pragmatism. No field of life is useless, but in Cameroon, some fields are better than others, which is wrong. There is need for total redefinition of the academic system. Good evening to you. Doctor, I think I will end with you. What should be the way forward for our system of education in context with what we are living today?
Well, our educational system, we should try to identify our problems.
Okay.
Yes. If we actually identify, if each educational system or institution identify, especially in their specialty, and what they are specializing on, if they should identify the problem of Cameroon, they are going to lead the children towards that. There's what we call the PBL, problem-based learning. Yes, you know, you identify a problem and then you try to seek for the solution.
Don't we know our problems already?
I mean, we don't work on our problems. Yes. We need to actually emphasize on the issue of working on our problem and not just making schools or as a business. Yeah, and that is where the problem is. And now let the government be able to give an enabling environment, perhaps to these institutions too, because sometimes we only blame them, they are not doing their job, but they go through some hurdles. Dr. Nipera will tell us that I'm sure he doesn't lack problems in his institution. He doesn't pay his students as they pay in the US. So I know that he also has problems, and the government can come in to be able to enable or to assist him in that perspective. And I'm sure that if we do that, and then equipment of our institution is fundamental too. And then we should be able to have our leaders who are people-centered. But we cannot have leaders who are still analog and who you think can be able to think as the world is going. The world is changing fast because of the aspiration of the young people. But we have leaders who are already tired of thinking. Okay. How do we expect them to think the young people?
Doctor, this topic we are going to do a part 2 of this same topic. But doctor, lastly, yes, should we also take politics out of our system of education, where everybody sees he or she is doing what the president instructed them to do?
No, I was going to say something else, but just one quick question on that politics. The politics we practice in Cameroon is very primitive politics. It's not really politics or development. And yes, it's very primitive. And I've said that the operating system in the nation is going to change, and when it changes, it will cause the death of 350 political parties, and we'll begin to do politics the way it ought to be done. Let me lay that aside. Then to come back to answer your question, because many people continue to blame the government for not creating the enabling environment. Let me say it very clearly. I have been in the school educational system, private educational system, for long now, and to say that the government has actually opened her doors at the Ministry of Higher Education for the people of the private sector to open up schools in their areas of gifting and specialties to train youths in Cameroon to be able to solve problems. That is not a problem, and Professor Famendongo has been very, very, very open to that, and so
he will be very happy now.
Yes. I mean, I'm saying this because I've been there since 2002. I've been there since 2002, and the bottom line, the thing is that some people also take those papers, those authorizations. They open schools, they don't equip them, and then things don't happen the way they were supposed to happen because the mentality is not exactly right. But if you can do things the way it is done, government will be very happy, and government is looking forward to that, because that's the only thing, that's the only way we are going to give jobs to youth, and that's the only way we are going to develop, not this theory.
Okay, we have to end here. Certainly next week, because tomorrow we already have a topic. I would have said that we continue with this topic tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to be revisiting this controversial, they call it article resolution 1608. Who is not telling the truth about what Cameroon's history is all about? We are going to be visiting that tomorrow. I want to thank you all who took time off to watch the program, especially you who sent text messages. Doctor, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Wish everyone the best, and to say that out of topic, there's going to be a dialogue in this nation, there's going to be reconciliation, and there's going to be unity. Thank you. The war is going to stop. Thanks.
Doctor, thank you too.
Thank you. I'm very humble. I think that education should reconstruct the mind.
Okay, Professor, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you for watching us. And I want to end by saying that knowledge is very important, but self-knowledge is the most important thing you should go for, because it brings productivity and creativity and productivity.
Okay, Doctor, thank you too for coming.
Thanks so much, Leo. Just to say that educationists need to be educated on what the fundamental on how to educate the young people of our society.
I want to say thank you to all of you and the production team. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.